Okay, about this is our summary. Wharton's function. Indeed, he's a storyteller. He's a letter writer. He's a foil, and then we can do a lot of comparison between Frankenstein and Wharton. Let me skip this. I think in the first PowerPoint file, I did a very careful comparison between the similarities in their passion, and then you should continue the comparison by including the last part. Where Frankenstein looks at ambition differently from Wharton, etc. Okay. Okay, and then also we need to look at how they deal with friendship differently. Okay, how Frankenstein they deal with how they deal with friendship and knowledge differently. Okay, for instance, Frankenstein is definitely more knowledgeable. Wharton is a reduced version of romantic hero, or maybe we can even say that he's a failed version. But don't forget that romantic hero is not really blameless in this novel. Romantic hero here is to be sympathized with and criticized, both. And with that in mind, we can say that Wharton is a reduced version because, for one thing, he's not really knowledgeable. If Frankenstein has all the knowledge he needs in that field, Wharton is self-educated. Okay, so he is not as educated, as knowledgeable as Frankenstein. Okay, so his desire is just to go to a place which was never visited, but it's actually not realized. In his case, it's not realized. It's a failure. Okay. But Wharton, like Frankenstein, cherishes friendship. Frankenstein, not because of his lack. Wharton, because of his lack. Wharton is lonely as a youth, and that's why he says he always wants a friend. But Frankenstein is born out of a good environment, a loving family, and maybe that's why when he's all wrapped up in his pursuit, he doesn't really care that much in keeping the correspondence with his family members and with Elizabeth. Okay, and then also Wharton is again, like Frankenstein himself makes a comparison or a contrast between himself and Clerval on the one hand and Elizabeth on the other hand. So we see how Frankenstein is different from either of them. But Wharton is one to be open to influences. Okay, he himself says that he has been taken care of by Margaret. Okay, so he is under her gentle and feminine fosterage. Okay, so I think that Wharton's dislike of violence has a lot to do with his being influenced by Margaret. Okay, so all of that shows that Wharton, strictly speaking, is not a romantic hero. He's only close to Frankenstein because of the similarities. Okay, but in many other aspects, he's more human than Frankenstein as a romantic hero. More human and domesticated. Okay. Okay, and then if we say that Wharton cannot compare with Frankenstein as a romantic hero, then on the other hand, we can say that he's more human. He's more human because of his ability to adjust and his ability to sympathize. And neither of these two are abilities Frankenstein has. Okay, I think all of this suggests how Mary Shelley very carefully provides a human frame, to a story which is really terrifying. Okay, so Wharton he decides to go back to England, and at that point he's very disappointed. He thinks that he's a failure. He'll go back to England, ignorant and disappointed. Okay, but then he also realizes that this is the right decision because he cannot lead the crewmen to danger. Okay, so I think this is where Wharton is more adjustable than Frankenstein. And Frankenstein, on the other hand, is kind of relentless, impulsive in his pursuit of knowledge. Okay, this is why I talked about Frankenstein is two-minded, about Wharton's change of mind. But at the end, he agrees with Wharton, and then he criticizes his own passion. Okay, so it shows that Frankenstein is able to adjust, but to a limited degree. Okay. Okay, here, the other thing is Frankenstein is always obsessed by the monster. But Wharton, in his going back to England, he expects consolation. And that again makes explain why Frankenstein is kind of reckless towards the end. He is almost, yes, he... I think he has one brother left, right? Ernest, right? But there's no mentioning of the brother. Okay, and that's very strange. William is dead, the father is dead, Elizabeth is dead. So Frankenstein is almost without any family members, but he still has Ernest. But that's not mentioned. But Wharton has Margaret back home, his sister. So he says that when he goes back to England, he'll find consolation there. Okay, so I think that this difference can also make Wharton more humanized, more human than Frankenstein. On the other hand, Frankenstein is really pushed to the human boundaries. Yeah. Okay. I think here we have talked about all the things that make Frankenstein similar to Wharton. How they both of them have this passion for human boundaries, etc., etc. But one thing that makes Frankenstein very different from Wharton is Wharton make compromises, but Frankenstein is self-centered. Okay, so that's the main difference. Let me see what I wanted to say here. Page 212. Oh, yeah. Here, in his writing to, yes, Wharton, even in the most dangerous situation, they are literally icebound. They are kind of stranded by mountains of ice. But still, here, when he writes to Margaret, he said, the last paragraph, "And what, Margaret, will be the state of your mind? You will not hear of my destruction. You will anxiously await my return. Years will pass, and you will have visitings of despair, and be tortured by hope. Oh, my beloved sister." So this is one thing that makes Wharton, again, very different, and that is his ability to sympathize. Okay, but then also Wharton, I think, to a degree, knows what makes him different from Margaret. And that is Margaret has a husband, and he doesn't have a wife. Okay, so talking about human boundaries, you see how from the monster to Frankenstein to Wharton and then to Margaret, we see different human beings with different kinds of human ties. The monster does not have any tie except Frankenstein. Frankenstein has many ties, but many of them are severed, destroyed. Wharton has a very strong tie with Margaret, and Margaret has more ties. Okay, so I think that this is again what makes the novel well structured in such a way to help us ask the same question of ourselves, and that is how we want to position ourselves in between our family connections, our ties, and our ideal. Okay. When I was in college, my sister used to scold me and said that whenever there was a final exam, I would be 六亲不认. Now, and I still remember her comment at this point. Okay, so I guess that's something to always keep in mind, whether you get to be too concentrated on what you are pursuing, at the expense of those people whom you should keep in touch with, whom you should care about, etc. Okay. Now I'm different. I can even grade the papers, or at the same time I watch TV with my mother. Okay. Of course, I'm not going to give some wrong grades, but that's something to do. At the same time. Okay. So this is the first. Just now we covered the first topic, and that is the function of Wharton. And then the second topic to consider, to review, is the role of women. Okay, and we have Caroline, we have Elizabeth, and both of them are caring, angelic figures. Okay, it is in a way interesting that Mary Shelley presents women as self-sacrificing and angelic, because maybe that's an ideal image she has of women, and maybe that's what she feels about herself. Having Shelley, who is really idealistic, revolutionary, but also very responsible, wanting free love with many women around him, etc. I think connecting these selfless women with Mary Shelley is very interesting. I wouldn't be able to give an answer to this. I just think that that's something to think about. Okay, yes, because I think she's a feminist. I think Mary Shelley, in her time, is a feminist. She's able to criticize romantic hero, but then I guess maybe there is something psychological here about her invariably self-sacrificing angelic women figures here. Okay, so Caroline is an angel, and she's a guardian angel to the afflicted and at home, and she also rescued Elizabeth. And very interestingly, talking about mothers or women being selfless, this almost is like an inheritance between Caroline and Elizabeth, because the moment she rescued Elizabeth, she said that, "Oh, I'm bringing you your pal." In other words, Elizabeth is there in the family for Frankenstein. Her destiny is decided the moment she's adopted and brought back home. Okay. Okay, and then yes. Okay, let me skip the part about Elizabeth. Yes, Elizabeth is intended as a gift. And she's poetic, but then also interestingly, she's presented as empty. Okay, let me read this line. She busies herself in following the aerial creation of the poet, so she's poetic. But then the word for Frankenstein is a secret, but the word for Elizabeth was a vacancy, which she showed to people with imaginations of her own. For me, this is really condescending. Although I think it's a confirmation of her imagination. But to say that her world is empty, is a vacancy, for me is quite negative, quite a negative description. But indeed, that's really how women are like in this novel. They are selfless, they are soft, kind. At one point, when Elizabeth writes to Frankenstein, she doesn't blame Frankenstein for not writing to them. She just said that, "Oh, I'm sorry, I cannot be there taking care of you. I'm happy that somebody else is taking care of you, etc. I'm happy that Clerval is there to take care of you. I really wish I could be there to take care of you." So she's quite resigned to this role of being a caretaker only, without her own desire, without her own needs, etc. Okay, so all in all, she's a caretaker. She's a companion. She has not her own desires. She worries, but she worries for Frankenstein. And then she represses her fear, okay, etc. Okay, and she dies at the end unknowingly. She doesn't know why. Okay, so that's Caroline, Elizabeth, both female characters who are actually sacrificed. And then Justine. I want to skip Justine because I think that we talked a lot about her, how she's wrong and also sacrificed. Okay, Sophie too, presented as being an angel, and then she's rescued. So, from Caroline to Elizabeth to Justine to Sophie, they are all motherly figures, and then they are all motherless. Okay, and they are all rescued. Okay, and then expected to be virtuous and selfless. Okay, so this is indeed a very dominant pattern in this novel. And if you just look at this, maybe you will think that, oh, Mary Shelley is not really a good author, so she only presents stereotypes to women. But no, if we compare the female characters to the male characters, and that is Wharton, Frankenstein, and the monster, then I think that a lot of interesting findings can be made about what being romantic hero means. Yeah, I think that's really the main focus. What romantic hero can do, and the consequences of their heroism. Okay. But before we move on to that, I think besides women, talking about human boundaries, there are the boundaries which the guys, the men, want to cross and reach beyond. But then there are also human boundaries, margins of societies. Women are seen as inferior, passive. That's one thing. But then beyond women, there are also some others which are just barely mentioned, which serve as the exotic boundaries of this European society. If we don't want to say that it's a British society, because their family they live in Geneva, so it's not really British. Okay, so in this European society, outside of it we have the Oriental. As a kind of exotic boundaries. For instance, I think we talked about it. Clerval is very interested in India, and he's also interested in Indian language, and he believes that he can assist colonialism, with his knowledge in the colonial language, such as Indian language. Okay, and then we also have the negative presentation of Arab. Sophie's father, who seek help from Felix first, but then betray the whole family. Okay, so the Arabians are presented also negatively, and Sophie is exempt from this negative presentation because she's Christian, she's not Muslim. Okay, and then also there is the Irish nurse, or the Irish people that Frankenstein come across. When he is washed ashore, when he gets to the shore of Ireland, the Irish people there were all rough, and especially this Irish nurse, who is very cruel and unfeeling to Frankenstein. So here we get some negative representations of the ethnic minorities, such as the Arabian, the Oriental, and the Irish. Okay, and that revealed indeed the blindness or the prejudices of Mary Shelley in her time. And also here, the Irish is not categorized as Irish. It's about the class. So here there is this presupposition that the lower classes can have some general bad qualities. Can share some general bad qualities. Okay, so these are all the negative presentations of the marginalized figures. Okay, about boundary crossing, besides the geographic boundary, I think that we need to consider different kinds of boundaries which are discussed in this novel. For instance, there is besides geographic boundary, there is this boundary between the mortality and immortality. Okay. Also, here I'm giving you some other texts that we have talked about. Some of them you may not know, but that's fine. In dealing with the boundaries between the human and the immortal, there is also the issue of whether we can empathize or sympathize with what's on the other side of human mortality. For instance, in Keith's Ode on the Grecian Urn, we have the speaker who is able to empathize with the figures on the urn. So that's another kind of boundary crossing. A kind of boundary crossing which does not involve negative consequences, like Frankenstein does, okay? And there is also the boundaries between mortality and art or nature, like Ozymandias, the way Ozymandias deals with it. Or that's from last semester, Anecdote of the Jar. That's also another poem that deals with the boundary between art and nature, okay? And dealing with boundary crossing, we can also talk about the boundaries of convention and constraints. For instance, you haven't read either of these texts, but we can talk about Pygmalion. When Eliza is doing the social climbing, she not only becomes improved in her social status, she changed the nature of the social status. She changed the definition of being a lady. She changed the definition of being a lady that works in a florist shop. Okay, so all of that suggests that boundary crossing that we have dealt with in our class, involve not many kinds of boundaries. There can be the boundaries of class too, or the boundaries of social constraints. Okay, but boundary crossing, as I just said about the others, the colonial others or the racial others, boundary crossing can also involve invasion. So boundary crossing can be can be empathy on the one hand, but it can also be invasion of another person's mind, or invasion, possession of another person's body. Like My Last Duchess will be a good example of how the Duke, when he's not happy about the Duchess, he crosses the boundary to kill her off or to send her to a convent, so that she's completely possessed and constrained. Okay, so that's another boundary crossing, which is actually a denial of the subjectivity of another person. Okay, so by extension, sometimes a boundary crossing can be a loss of self or a loss of family, because once we cross the boundary, sometimes we don't remember where we are. And this, I think, can also happen to us, when we browse on the internet. If you go from side to side, go from one Facebook page to another Facebook page, sometimes you lose a sense of yourself or your position, or you lose a sense of who your family or community really is. Because on the side of the Facebook, there can be some ads, some other people's sites, or some reminders of the other pages that you get curious about. And then sometimes you roam around and roam away from your realm of familiarity, okay, and get distracted by something else. And this is actually what happens to Frankenstein. In his pursuit of knowledge, he has the two problems. One is he becomes irresponsible, and the other is he becomes indecisive. He put off the actions that he is supposed to take. Okay, and that leads to even more serious problems. Okay, and finally, so here I'm trying to when I'm trying to extend the implications of boundary crossing, I think the geographic one is the most obvious one, but then there is the human boundaries and the social boundaries, or the boundaries of our own ego, which are not really obvious. Okay, but then these are also boundaries that we need to be aware of. When we read a text, when we think about ourselves, etc. And finally, the least obvious boundary is that between the conscious and the unconscious. Okay, and that is sometimes boundary crossing can involve the return of the repressed. The uncanny can be the return of the repressed. Okay, sometimes we try to repress some of our fears and some of our desire too much, but then repression cannot last forever. They'll come back. The repressed will come back, either as symptoms. Like for instance, you are really diffident. You are really not sure about yourself. Okay, and you saw that nobody see it. Nobody know that you are diffident. But maybe you reveal it by like always tricking your hair, or by always dressing yourself very, very well. Okay, so sometimes some excessive behavior or excessive pursuits of something else can be a disguise of the deficiency you have in some other area. And that could be the return of the repressed. Okay, so that's the idea, that the repressed can never be forever repressed, unless you can sublimate it, unless you can work on it, be aware of what you don't like to face, and then turn it to something else consciously. Otherwise, repressed will come back, will always come back. And then we can say that the monster, can be the return of the repressed. And then you can also, talking about the novel on this symbolic level, you can always say that, oh, the monster always come back, several times, and the repeated return of the monster, shows that there's no way for us to reject the monsters in us. So in other words, if we look at it really from a psychological perspective, we can say that the monster is the monstrous in Frankenstein's mind, and there's no way for Frankenstein to get rid of it. It will always come. Yeah. Okay.